Hi all, this is the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and this is From Russia with Love 6.
Борьбе за независимость как Советского Союза, так и вообще Великой России.
Hi all and welcome to From Russia with Love Part 6. Right, this was not originally a part of my series. Part 6 has now become Part 7, which is about 80 to 90% done. But the information contained is prevalent in today's world. I felt I had to release the information now, and we all get a greater understanding of world issues and also what happened to Russia. Repeated looting of its treasures, vaults, industries and people, all done by the same hidden hand peoples that live amongst us today, weaving its web of sacrifice and harvesting that spreads like a cancer all over this planet. So what was Part 6 will now become Part 7. This is much shorter than most of the previous 5, but no less intriguing, impactful, and dare I say it, in some parts, fairly explosive in terms of knowledge, and it will not disappoint you. This show is like financial tyranny on steroids that will stagger, shock and dumbfound you in equal measure. You will realise how far they will go. It will connect more dots and shine a light on the cockroaches of this planet beyond all reason. This is intel in booming form that will make many uncomfortable globally, as they thought they could hide forever. Not no more they can't. And a lot of what you will hear tonight will be very new. The tales of Russia has been written by the victors several times over, most of which is not based on fact. Its global achievements ignored, the advancements of spirituality, knowledge, technology and wisdom rendered mute outside of small circles within that vast country. And those advancements need to be spread globally, not only for the benefits of the Russian people, but for us all. Their ancient ways can teach us much. No longer must it hide in small circles. It needs to be expanded out to the world. The world needs to hear the real Russia and its past, which will impact us all, like it did in the times of Tsarina, more commonly known as Hyperborea, and its sister island, Thule. The music tonight will reflect the Rus Slavonic peoples. This is etched into Nordic, Scandinavian, Irish and Scottish music and much of Europe, and lives on through it today. I hope you all enjoy it. Hi all, I hope you like that music. I think they're called Trag, Gloginji, if I pronounced that correct. I'm going to need there's a few tongue twisters tonight that I'm going to have to get through, but you'll get the gist of it all. So the first part is the Illuminati, which is no longer. It's the factions, Rothschild's clan, and a new term, Zedo Masons, who stole from Russia, ruined the USSR, and robbing Russia and trying to establish it in a monarchy. So the pillage of Russia began as early as the reign of the Russian Tsar Alexander II in 1876. The Rothschilds billionaires concluded with the Russian Tsar an agreement for the storage of Russian gold in Spain. The gold was in the amount of 47,800 tons. Not ounces, tons, and was laid in the mountains of Spain, and the Tsar of Russia determined 19 people as the custodians of this gold in Spain. Now these are some of the former trustees of what is now known as the Manor World Holding Trust. None of them did anything for humanity, and only to save themselves. And one of the Rothschilds became a financial manager in the royal treasury, and the Rothschilds clan stores all the documents for this gold in the state of California, America, and is currently, it is said, the owner of this gold, except they're not, as it all belongs to the trust now, and it will be transferred back to Russia when safe to do so. Now, back in 1904, a group of representatives of 48 states, that's not states of America, that's countries as they used to name it then, was known as the G48, at a secret meeting in Paris, approved the procedure for the establishment of the international financial system and the world monetary source, and was a nice precursor for the becoming monstrosity known as the Federal Reserve. So how it was all set up. So the Russian Tsar Nicholas II, in agreement with the leaders of other states, which is countries, decided to create the League of Nations, now called the UN. Now it was said to improve trade relations between countries, but the reality of it was much different, as we all know. And it was decided on the basis of the League of Nations to create a single world financial centre with its own currency. Now, to create a golden pool, which is an asset base of the League of Nations, Russia, through the banker of House of Romanov, Edward Rothschild, contributed to the authorised capital of the world financial system by delivering 48,600 tons of gold to America, which was then sent to the Fort Knox store. With this delivery of gold to America in 1904 through 1912, Russia received rights to assets in the golden pool in the amount of $52 billion in gold. But the Rothschilds deceived Nicholas II, the Emperor of Russia, after he took out the gold to ensure the operation of the new world currency. Then the Rothschilds forced the US President Woodrow Wilson, who was troubled with his finances for his election campaign, to transfer their private property, the Federal Reserve System, together with the gold out of the golden pool. In other words, the Rothschilds asset-backed the Fed with the Russian assets. In 1912, HSBC Bank issued 12 Liberty Bond certificates, which was transferred to the US President, which then in 1913 were deposited in the banks of the US Fed system. Now, the Federal Reserve Act was signed 2 days before Christmas in 1913 by US President Woodrow Wilson in exchange for funding his election campaign with the Rothschilds, and thereby deprived America of its political and financial independence to this day. So the Federal Reserve was created, which is a private enterprise of the Rothschilds, was founded in 1910 during a secret conference on the island of Jekyll. All very fitting that they did it on Jekyll Island, as the evil played by Mr. Hyde and Seek with our finances and freedoms. Is it not? This meeting, which included all major US banks and banks of other states, a huge share of participation in the Federal Reserve System, 88.8%, and in the share of the world money source belongs to Russia. The remaining 11.2% to 43 international beneficiaries. Receipts in the amount of 88.8%, having a security code 1226, corresponded to the international code of the Geneva Register of the Permanent Representative Organization 14646 ACS HQ /Pro 14646 ACS HQ of the Higher International Committee of the League of Nations, now the UN, are under the control of the Rothschilds and were transferred to the family of the Russian Emperor Nicholas II in 6 copies. That was the receipt. The annual income for these deposits was fixed at 4%, including the LIBOR rate, and denoted the annual interest rate for the use of the gold deposit. So now you know why the clowns were refixing and fiddling the LIBOR rate involving all banks, yet again all at the Rothschilds' request. Now it's my understanding that the 4% interest has not been paid to the asset holders since 1961. The LIBOR rate was to be paid annually to that state and to that representative that pledged gold, but this was not done as agreed by the order of the Rothschilds, who then unleashed World War I. This rate, instead of the transfer to Russia annually, settled on an account X-1786 of the World Bank for 300,000 accounts in 72 international banks, was accounted for in World Bank operations. 3 signatures were identified for each account, only one of which was true. These accounts are subject to 8 committees, AK1, AK2, and so on to AK8. The resources on these accounts are the property of the holders of the IFS, which is now G4, G8, and they have a separate accounting from the outstanding dollars. The United Nations International High Committee determines the commissioners authorised to execute the issue. Notice in 1904 there was a G48, and now it's G4, G8. So they dropped around 40 states, 40 countries out of the agreement altogether. These institutions are the Fed, provider of financial instruments, and the Treasury Department of Washington, D.C., cash collection facilities for the financial instruments based on the World Bank's X-1786 account resources. All these documents confirming the gold pledged in the Federal Reserve from Russia in the amount of 48,600 tons. The mother of Russia, Tsar Nicholas II, Maria Feodorovna Romanova, placed it in a Swiss bank, which is accessible only by the heirs and is controlled by the Rothschild clan. The neutral Swiss again, playing the lead role. All too common, as we know. Now, initially, all the gold certificates that belonged to Russia, the Emperor Nicholas II, were left for storage to Grigory Efimovich Rasputin. Yes, that Rasputin, who was the most spiritual Orthodox hero monk at the time. The Rothschilds gathered a whole Masonic conference at which they decided to get rid of Rasputin physically and steal the gold certificates from him. Samuel Hoare, a resident of British intelligence MI6 in Russia and part-time representative of the English General Staff at the Russian General Staff, led this operation. Rumours began to circulate that Rasputin and Alexandra Fedorovna were leaders of a pro-German court group and were seeking a separate peace deal with the Central Powers in order to help the survival of autocracy in Russia, and this was during World War I. These rumours were picked up by MI6 agents based in Russia. John Scale, a British agent working in Petrograd, recorded German intrigue was becoming more intense daily. Enemy agents were whispering of peace and hinting how they can get it by creating disorder and rioting, and that things looked bleak, according to the MI6 report. not for peace. They weren't interested in peace. Oh no, these people never wanted peace. They wanted war and the spoils of Russia, as this next piece confirms. Recently released files show that Samuel Hoare, the head of British Secret Intelligence Service in Petrograd, sent a message to Mansfield Smith Cumming, who was the head of MI6, which was now under the banner of OSS. Hoare said he believed that Rasputin was sabotaging the Russian war effort, and if he was murdered, the country would be freed from the sinister influence that was striking down its natural leaders and endangering the success of its armies in the field. What he means by natural leaders is not a reference to the Russian people, but the Zionists. The fear was that Rasputin's influence would eventually persuade the Tsar Nicholas II to negotiate a separate peace deal with Germany. It was said this would have created serious military problems for British troops fighting in Europe, and it just shows you how cold and empty-souled these people are. Created serious military problems for troops, like war is some sort of a day trip parade. All wars create serious problems for the people fighting in them, but this is the way these people think. Rasputin was lured to Yusufov's house, and at that moment in his apartment on Gorokhovaya Street, was thoroughly searched. They turned everything upside down, but the gold certificates were no longer there. Rasputin, anticipating the end, gave them back to the Tsar, who in turn left them in the custody of his godson Peter Nikolaevich Dolgorukov. Then copies of the gold certificates of the royal family were distributed amongst family members and hidden in different places. The Rothschilds clan for 99 years, while a treaty on the creation and formation of the Fed was in effect, and the US dollar was the world currency, have managed the capital of the former royal family of Russia. This clan also managed the capital of the USSR and also the Russian Federation, located on the accounts of the Fed, which were exported under the leadership of the Rothschild from Russia in the early 20th century. As the Rothschilds are no longer in control of these accounts, and the trust is, this is why Kim has been returning some of the funds to Russia, only for clowns there to transfer it to the Rothschilds-led Chinese elements. We won't be doing it again. She will not be sending any more of Russia's monies owed until Putin and Russia get their act together. For those who are new to this show, just because I said Chinese, do not mistake of thinking that that is the Chinese government. It's not. In fact, naming countries and blaming countries is not the correct way to point fingers. The clowns use these countries as their vehicle to loot from. China itself wants rid of these clowns also, as they have been looted severely and are in deep trouble financially currently. Later, the Rothschilds ruled the capitals of the USSR under the rule of Lenin, and then in the period from 1955 and especially the last 30 years, when the USSR collapsed and the Russian Federation was robbed under the leadership of Boris Yeltsin. Boris Yeltsin was recruited by the Rothschild clan and incorporated into the administration of the USSR and then the Russian Federation. Yeltsin in 1994 took initiation in the Knights of the Order of Malta, along with Primakov, Shevardnadze, Yakovlev, Chernomyrdin, Roman Abramovich, Oops. Lisovsky, Shemiev, Orshev, Gozinsky, Brezhnev, Smolensky, Gaidar, Shubey, Shavlinsky, Borodin, Luchkov, Sobchak, Grashev, Boryov, Borovoy, Fedorov, Govorochin, Tsetarelli, Kasparov, that's another name people will be familiar with, and Lebedev and many others became Masons. At present, there are more than 500 Masonic lodges in Russia, known as the Order of the White Eagle, and is headed by the gold mining company of Viktor Tumanov, who award Masons with orders and medals. There's that seducement element again we keep talking about in the shows. Here, have some houses or some contracts and have a nice shiny medal to keep you all distracted. In the governing bodies of the country, there are now 356 Masons who receive orders and medals from the hands of the Chevalier of the Order of Malta. Maria Vladimirovna Romanova and her son Georgy Hohelzern have also been added in recent years. Maria Romanova and her son Georgy are false heirs to the Russian throne and are constantly in touch with the Rothschilds, and on the order of the latter systematically visit Russia and practically set the tone for all Masons in the government and other state bodies of the Russian Federation, aimed at the collapse of the Russian Federation and the establishment of a Russian monarchy. The State Duma of the Russian Federation and the Federation Council of the Russian Federation are also headed by Masons under the control of the Rothschilds clan. At present, when the Fed term dated 1913 expired, the Rothschilds clan is trying to extend its management of the Fed and Russian capitals and the existence of the US dollar through false heirs represented by the Chevalier of the Order of Malta, Maria Romanova, and her son George Hohenzollern, and other members of the Order of Malta, who rule the Russian Federation in secret from the Russian people and trying to establish a monarchy in Russia. Essentially, what they're trying to do here is install a new controlled Russian royalty into Russia, then demand the return of the Russian assets out of the trust, and then the Rothschilds has control of the gold again and starts up a new Fed, likely based in Russia, which in turn will anger the Chinese elements, which then creates division between Russia and China. And as Rothschilds will play both sides, this is how these clans operate at this level. It was the Rothschilds clan that in 1917, through their representatives in Russia, Zvitovsky and Ryabushinsky, financed Trotsky, Lenin and his team, organizing a revolution in Russia, and then demanded Lenin to destroy the entire Tsar family of Nicholas II in order to become the owners of all the capital in the Fed on behalf of Russia. Now, apparently it was only thanks to Stalin, who was a cousin of the father of the Emperor of Nicholas II, that a group of people close to Stalin managed to save the Tsar's family, take them away from Trotsky, which was deceiving the Rothschilds themselves, and hide them away for many years. So much so that the people in Russia were unaware of this fact for several decades. At present, the Rothschilds clan and their monarchy, after the Hohenzollerns are made monarchs, they will leave the Fed founders on behalf of their grandfather and great-grandfather Nicholas II, and then the Rothschilds will have legal grounds to own the money of the whole planet. This is what they're trying to do. Well, we know how that works. The original agreement of 1913 of the Rothschilds' management plans to move the Fed to the island of Macau, which is next to Singapore, under the jurisdiction of China, not China the country, just the way they operate. And from there, the Rothschilds will manage the entire world financial system again, like they did with the Federal Reserve in America. That was their plan. That failed. In Russia, the Rothschilds plan to create only a duplicating centre of Fed, which, according to their plans, should be headed by A.S. Voloshin. Voloshin was retained in the government when Putin took over in 1999, and Voloshin resigned on the 29th of October 2003. Whilst Chief of Staff, Voloshin was widely regarded as pro-business, and his resignation came amidst the prosecution focus on the Yukos Oil Company. More on that later. In 2018, A.S. Voloshin became a secret owner of American Ethane, with Konstantin Nikolaev, Mikhail Yuriev, and Andrei Konasbiev. This is based in Houston, Texas, and Bush country. No surprise there. And the same region where all the stolen oil out of Iraq and Iran is going. But isn't it funny how you don't hear in the media of these business transactions in light of the alleged Russian collusion? Is it not? Is that not Russian collusion directly? The independence of Russia, and indeed of the rest of the world, shall thus come to an end right away should this take place. Everything in the world, land, water, forests, natural resources, will only be in the Rothschilds' hands. They already, through the Christian Fund of V.I. Kobzar, bought up all the lands in the European part of the Russian Federation. In the meantime, the Rothschilds actually used the main package of the Federal Reserve System, 88.8%, but this property belongs to Russia in the person of its former Emperor Nicholas II, as well as those assets that were taken out by the Rothschilds during the reign of Lenin. After that, this export of gold took place according to the international agreements signed by the USSR during the reign of Khrushchev, Perlmutter, Brezhnev, Budalovsky, Andropov, and Fleckstein during the period of Gorbachev's rule, with the help of the special group called Z, or Z for those in Europe, under the secret Washington agreements, and during Yeltsin's rule through exported capital and the so-called Yeltsin's family. It should be emphasized that the group Z was established in the USSR on the initiative of the Rothschilds. After the signing of the Washington agreements by the Rothschilds and other Federal Reserve managers, Rockefeller, Morgan, Baruch, with the traitors of the Russian people, Dolgich, Fallin, Pagodin, Bayakovsky, Ermolev, and others in September 1977. I think by now we all know who the Z group represents, don't we? Yes. This agreement provided for the training of influence agents, the construction of clandestine factories, the export of gold, diamonds, rare earth minerals, oil, and money through specially created funds and banks, under the control of the Mason traitor V.V. Gerashenko, under the pretext of allegedly creating a safety cushion for future generations and the prevention of World War III. It's a bit like the CAFR accounts in America. You know, saving for a rainy day for the States. Yeah, right. Pull the other one that's got balls on. To carry out this operation, the Rothschilds clan created a special organisation called Fonton at the Fed. Fonton initially in 1980 through 1984 on the territory of the USSR formed a special group of individuals with non-Russian nationality numbering 184 people who all studied in Uzbekistan and then in Chekhov, which is in the Moscow region. This group, under the provisional name Z, included persons hostile to Soviet power who were heirs of the former Tsarist estate and princely families of the Tsarist Russia, who through their activities sought to regain their property lost in 1917, and then in the late 1980s another 2,000 people joined this group. To finance this special group Z operating in the USSR, which activities were directed at undermining the ideological and economic foundations of the USSR, the Rothschilds created in 1982 a special fund called Wonta, which accounts replenished by the Fed due to the order of the Rothschilds, later used to create 33 financial funds in the USSR, and these funds engaged in the withdrawal of capital from Russia. Yes, the Wonta funds, as in Leo Wonta. Those funds were stolen by him and his Langley II co-conspirators to loot Russia again at the behest of the Rothschilds. Leo was then subsequently thrown under the bus and cut out of the deal and then thrown into jail for good measure. You see, this is what happens to agents. They all think that they're important, but all of them are expendable. Amongst these funds that were created, 33 financial funds, the names of them, not so much the Russian names, but the names of the projects should alarm people. Gladyshev Foundation, headed by V.I. Gladyshev, Social Protection Fund of Youth, of Kononovich. E.I. Kononevich, the Planeta Foundation. As Harmachev, Simiko, Inter-Regional Public Charitable Foundation, Man, Earth, Universe, later renamed as the non-profit organisation Charity Fund CZV. S.I. Posilov, Non-Profit Partnership International Fund for the Formation of Energy Flows. Menashev Egorova Kononovich, whose the head was E.V. Egorova, Interregional Public Fund for Social Support of Veterans of Civil Service, fund called Referent. V.G. Maziev, International Reserve Fund of Maria Pavlovna Romanova. See, it all goes back to them. Siabeko Depository Russia Fund, Princely Council of Rus. V.A. Dumaninka Charitable Foundation, Repentance, World Peace Fund of the USSR. Karpov, International Consortium, Society for Children. Now, the head of both of them were Zagreb Belini, and the Fund for the Promotion of Scientific and Technical and Cultural Programs. All very humanitarian, is it not? Except all of it is bollocks. VM Sergeyev International Charitable Christian Foundation. Oops, here comes the church. VI Kobzar Philanthropic Foundation in the name of St. John the Baptist. Really. AV Morozov International Cooperative Holding Golden Section. That will come up again later. SV Krentz International Cooperative Holding Golden Axis. Kudryavtsev Foundation for Presidential Programs. NG Malyshev Territorial and Branch Financial Energy Union of the Department of Public Prosecutions. The names they come up with. EB Latasheva International Supreme Coordination Council for Interaction with Economic and Financial Structures. NV Ilchenko International Charitable Foundation to assist Professor Gerasimov. Nekrasov International Consumer Society of Golden Axis. Again, that will come up later. Yar Polonsky International Consortium Infomir. O.A. Lanov Russian Fund for Assistance to Refugees, Compatriots. That will come up again later. M.A. Demidov, the Platina Foundation, and funds in the form of Billionaires Club, Belgium, International Charitable Fund for Mercy and Health, whose code is MKM MSK RUS 7. Liechtenstein International Innovation Fund, MKM SIR 144. World Innovation Capital Fund, MKM ZOR 8. Switzerland again. World Insurance Fund, MKM ARS 24. Germany World Indivisible Fund, MKM UR 27. Monaco World Accumulation Fund, MKM SWET 9. England Investment and Industrial Consortium, Zoloto Sechny. France Scientific Consortium, Zoloto Sechny. Spain World Foundation for the Survival of Humankind, also same name, Zoloto Sechny. The same World Club of Billionaires was created in Russia in the form of the Consumer Society, Club MKM, under the leadership of General SVR Merkulov, and for the management of all these companies, the management company Consumer Society International Cooperative Holding, Zoloto Sechny, was established with the General Director S.V. Krentz, that name again. In 1982, under the pressure from the Rothschilds and by decision of the Central Committee of the CPSU, which is the Communist Party of Soviet Union, which is Zionism, not Russian, and the President of the USSR Armed Forces, a gold deposit of the USSR was made from the volumes of Russia's historical values in the United States in Fort Knox Gold Depository. This depository mortgage provided for the satisfaction of the investment needs of a number of states in agreement with the USSR as the guarantor of the world. Responsible for the storage of this gold in the Fort Knox Gold Depository from the USSR was appointed Lieutenant General of the KGB. Can you believe this? Kobzar Ivan Stepanovich, in whose name all documents were drafted in the fort. And in the USSR, all documents were issued for Major General of the KGB, Kobzar Vladimir Ivanovich, the son of Ivan Kobzar, and Andropov led all operations on the preparations of these documents. A KGB running Fort Knox. So to the American people who have been told to fear those nasty Russians and those communists, how does it feel to be told that a KGB Russian agent was employed inside Fort Knox? Oops. To allegedly look after America's gold assets. Except it wasn't. Where was the media on this? Where is the real Russian collusion? Except majority of these people are not Russian at all, but Zionists. At present, only these individuals, the Kobzars, Ivanovich and Andropov, have the authority to this gold after the collapse of USSR. At present, this deposit in the amount of 35,000 tons of gold was transported to a storage facility in, go figure, Houston, Texas. Of course it was, and straight into the hands of the Bush cartel, operating under the Rothschild banner. As I've said many, many times, there is no gold or little of it left in Fort Knox. It's all a front. It's gone. This collateral gold was used as a tool for the formation of their own independent investment funds and subsequently used for targeted programs of the president and the government of the Russian Federation. All is issued through the certificate of a gold stock on 1 million American gold ounces, each in the form of bonds. It should be noted the gold deposit amounting to mortgaged 35,000 metric tons of gold. Debt receipts are then issued by the US side, represented by the US Federal Reserve Bank, in favour of the USSR, which indicates the right to sign by a single individual, V. Kobzar, who was appointed by Andropov. The International Charitable Christian Foundation was established under the leadership of the Rothschild clan and the Masons of Russia and several religious structures. Churches of the Name of Christ, Baptists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Pentecostals. Now, among the founders, there were no official Catholics, Orthodox, or Old Believer churches. The original Russian Orthodox would not buy into this. Still think the Christian is anything to do with Jesus? All a banking front organisation, including the head bank of that field, the Vatican. Money launderers, the lot of them. Now this foundation, Charitable Christian Foundation, has branches in more than 150 countries. The centre of this foundation is located in America, where it is headed by a Protestant, a former Soviet dissident prisoner, who spent 18 years in jail, and now the personal confessor to the wife of the former US President, Hillary Clinton. Oh dear. Ivan Stepanovich Kobzar. the personal confessor to the wife of the former US President, Hillary Clinton. Russian collusion. In Moscow, his son V. Kobzar heads the branch of this foundation. You know, can you believe all this shit? It's so far removed from the narrative we were told in public, or by alt media clowns either. It just beggars belief. Perhaps we should rename Anne to Clintonovsky, or Fuckovsky, more like it. Remember that Anne is a Rothschildian and Bill is a Rockefeller, another one of their fake marriages of convenience. But that last piece confirms from the From Russia with Love series all in one paragraph. Fake Russians, Zionists, churches and charities all involved, slush funds and the bullshit theory of the commies are coming when they arrived over 100 years ago. And no, Russians are not commies or communists. People have to quit falling for that illusion. This is the cult of Ra, Kali Ma, worshipping, sacrifice and death cult, using more modern day terms like Zionist, Masons, Templars and Jewish. But how does it feel as an American to be told all of your development, progress and lifestyles over the last 100 years or so was built off the back of the Russian peoples? Oops. This goes against the financial tyranny piece put out by Agents for Langley 2, Wilcock, Keenan and Fulford, where they all stated the gold belongs to Asia, did they not? Not Russia. Why Asia? Because the Feds were transferring operations to Macau under the control of China, but being ran by the Rothschilds. Now, the original financial tyranny document was written by an English person, and the one Wilcock used for his piece was heavily doctored and nowhere near the original findings by the original author. That author contacted me a few years ago, had his home ransacked, and that document was seized by MI5/6, and upon leaving the house they nailed his cat to the front door and killed it as a warning for him to quit. So Wilcock, Fulford and Keenan were using stolen documents which are then doctored to suit the Rothschilds that was given to them by the agency people. Not just ordinary agency people, but rogue agency people. Kobzar is number 4 in the list of the managing signatories with a high degree of dedication for the CPSU, which stands for the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. It is not by chance that the leaders of the Moscow branch of the Moscow Inter-District Inspectorate are quite often officers of the KGB and the GRU, better known as Spetsnaz. Relatives of the former leaders of the CPSU and USSR, Suslov, Primakov, etc., and there are groups of them in Hong Kong, London, Germany, Australia, Latin America, and Canada. We're going to have a music break. We'll be back with more soon. Singer Malada, and I'm not going to pronounce that in Russian. Nebnua Manania, whatever that means. Right, let's get on with more of the show. Now, since October of 1994, the organised international criminal community, consisting of citizens I. Kobzar, his son V. Kobzar, V. Romanova, S. Erganova, and I. Bektina, foreign citizens through Infinco and the International Charitable Christian Foundation and the Sostek Holding Company and the Sostek Monitoring Company, and both companies are headed by Viktor Durov with the assistance of Binitex, Shamakov, and the support of heads of power structures that stole and smuggled out of Russia around $2 trillion, which settled on private accounts of those and other individuals in the Western banks. Now, this money supply was collected from various regions by the financial and industrial group on the so-called Chechen Avizo in the amount of $86 billion. Oil exports and other sources, including budgetary funds in the amount of $100 million, which were transferred from the Central Bank of Russia under the control of the Rothschilds and appointed by Gerashenko and Paramonova to the above companies, and these budgetary funds were then never returned to the state, back to Russia. This is essentially the same as what happens in America with the Fed and the IRS. All monies get funneled out of the country and not a single dime goes to America. That practice is now halted in America, as I understand. To steal and withdraw this money and supply it to the Western banks, Infinco opened 20 representative offices abroad, through which money was exported, in particular to banks in London and England. 20 million went to London. In Liverpool, 20 million was sent there. Australia, Sydney, Canberra, $200 million. Washington, USA, and San Francisco, 100 million each. Sweden, Stockholm, 20 million. China, Shanghai, $20 million. South Korea, Seoul, $10 million. Japan, the island of Tenerife, the Canary Islands, Cyprus, Nicosia, Kenya, Nairobi, South Africa, Cape Town, Mexico, Mexico City, Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, including 216 million, were then transferred through the Lithuanian embassy in Moscow, ENC. As a result of this operation, the return was $2 trillion, which in part were distributed among individuals in Russia and settled on the accounts of these Masons involved in this operation, notably Chubey and Chernomyrdin, plus other members of the family through whom the whole operation for exporting capital to Russians was launched. These Masonic families took 45% of the $2 trillion. In America, the Clinton family took 15%, $30 billion. And Yasser Arafat took 23%. Oh dear. Yasser Arafat was part of the system. Oh my. The remaining 17% went to England and Germany, Bernstein, Brinkman, and also Colombia to the drug lord Escobar family, which is run by the Bushes and the Langley 2 group. The money laundering of this financial group was carried out through the banks of Hungary. The Rothschilds and the Kobzars directly supervised the operation. In the London ABC Bank, under the control of the Rothschilds, a group led by Gerashenko and others stored the documents for 65,000 tons of gold, which became known as the so-called Philippine gold. Except it's not Philippine gold that the Langley 2 operators in the Philippines and also Indonesia, you all know that is, have been trying to loot. It was the Russian gold. This gold was imported by Japan to the Philippines from the countries it occupied. Documents received during the reign of Andropov in 1983 as the share of the USSR after the division of capital at the request of Stalin by the victors in the Second World War. Now this proves what I said in the Factions show, that World War I was about removing the Russian Tsars and the wealth of Russia. World War II is about several programs eliminating the Rus, the whites, destroying Germany, France, Britain and America, plus stealing all the stolen gold again for a smaller select group. This is what the clowns are doing again now with their power play Libra, collecting all the funds and controlling it with a smaller group. History repeats always, unless it's dealt with. This gold was issued for the president of the church treasury member of the group Z, Gennady Tiniakov, one of the heirs of the ruling families in Russia, and Lezhnev oversees the account of the Philippine gold. Under this gold, 486 accounts were opened in various banks of the world in favour of Russia, which bears trillions of US dollars, managed by the Gerashenko criminal group and the Illuminati of the Masonic Order. But the Russian people do not get access to these funds, and they are not being introduced into the economy of the Russian Federation, but only being used by the Rothschilds clan and the traitors of the motherland. The traitors, I suggest, these people are not Russian. Upon closer inspection, most of them aren't, like Roman Abramovich. He's not Russian. He's Jewish. The export of capital from the country aimed at plundering and disintegrating the USSR was managed by the employees of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, Falin, Dolgich, Demenezev, Kryuchkov, Krishina, Pavlov, Brutinets, and Moseev. In fulfillment of the Washington agreements during the 4 to 5 years, underground refineries, new refineries, where foreign equipment was delivered, were built, and new technologies for gold, diamond, and oil production were delivered. The products produced at these clandestine factories were all smuggled abroad, where they were stored in various storage facilities specially created for this purpose, located in the territories of America, England, Germany, Bulgaria, likely Sofia, CIA Eastern Division, which just happens to be the same location Neil Keenan lived, or lives in, depending on whether you believe he's dead or not. Hungary, Switzerland. Remember the stories of a few years ago about the storage bunkers Cabal were using there? Now you know why. Syria, oh dear. Sweden, Iraq, Libya, Lebanon, China, and other countries of the world. All smuggled clandestine factories. During the 1985-1995, under the general management of the Rothschilds, a large number of Soviet assets in the form of money, gold, platinum, palladium, and hundreds of millions of tons of oil, diamonds, and other tangible assets were stolen and exported abroad by the Z Group. The bulk of these assets were credited to the accounts of hundreds of the Z Group members, some of them worth $1,750 billion US dollars, were credited to the accounts of close persons of the Gerashenko Group. In 1989, the financial manager of the Department of Central Committee of the CPSU, Krushina, in the presence of the head of Group Z, Moiseev, handed over 5,636,315,078,660 US dollars to just one of the members of the Z Group, Viktor Makievsky. Makievsky and other members of the Group Z, Gorbanovsky, transported these huge funds to, there you go again, Switzerland, that lovely neutral country, Switzerland again, home of the CIA. Yes, the main CIA branch is in Switzerland, not America. Of course, it houses the UN, World Horror Organization, and various other high-profile international bodies, and is the base for the Rothschilds. The same Switzerland who receives the American income tax money from the IRS. Near 800 billion was sent by wire from the IRS to a Rothschild Swiss bank last year until Kim intercepted it and put it in the trust. Oops. Under these funds, accounts were then opened in 21 countries of Western Europe, and 18 accounts were opened in the US, Canada, Japan, that were taken under the control of the Russian-American company, RAC, led by the Rothschilds. These capitals were sent by order of a secret government which is managed by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers for Russia to enter the international trading operations of the Fed. The Rothschilds and the world government were created in the US, Europe and Asia, 3 trades. The main trend in the United States is managed personally by the Rothschilds. Others in Europe are currently led by one of the representatives of Group C, Viktor Belevsky, and in the Asian territory recently led by Boris Yeltsin's daughter, Tatyana Dyashenko, who has now changed her surname and citizenship from Russia to Austrian. This is a common theme in the global elites, appointing inner circle with name changes to fool the public into thinking that these are just some ordinary, non-connected persons. They're not. Bill and Hillary Clinton are Rockefellers and Rothschilds. All convenience managers. Ivanka Trump and Kushner could be another example. Rothschildians and Rockefellers have been spreading their seeds everywhere in the upper echelons of society for this very purpose. After the collapse of the USSR and the coming to power of Boris Yeltsin supervising the withdrawal of capital from Russia, foreign managers of the Masonic Order, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Bush Sr. and Margaret Thatcher, demanded Yeltsin to take over the torch to further loot the Russian Federation. For Yeltsin's conspicuity, the secret world government through the International Reserve French Fund, managed by the Knight of the Order of Malta, Maria Vladimirovna Romanova, in which the assets of Russia in the Tsarist period were concentrated, transferred 46.8 billion to Yeltsin as a bribe. Sure, the Russian people are pleased with that. These funds in April 1992 were divided into 5 parts and transferred to personal accounts of Tatyana Dyashenko, Chernomyrdin, Shemiev, Nazarbayev, and the American Al Gore. The money for Tatyana Dyashenko, who's Yeltsin's daughter, was transferred to accounts opened in banks in the Solomon Islands and also Australia. Part of the money in the amount of $20.6 billion allocated to Shenomradin was subsequently distributed among those close to Yeltsin and Shenomradin to Roman Abramovich, Berezovsky, Jasinski, Smolensky, Potanin, Khodorkovsky, Prokhorov, Lebedev, Friedman, Alek Perov, Mahmoud, Lesin and Chubai, plus others, and a total of 24 people who, with the help of the money received, then managed to buy up and privatise the country's main production facilities. This facilitated the stealing of all Russian oil companies and the rise of the oligarchs. That's where all the money came from. Having received the above amount of funds through VEB from the International Reserve French Fund, Shenomradin, in agreement with Yeltsin on the command of the Order of Malta and the Rothschilds, signed an agreement with Al Gore on the sale of 500 tons of weapons-grade plutonium for $11.9 billion to the USA. $11.9 billion, when the real plutonium cost at that time was at least $8 trillion. With the export of weapons-grade plutonium to the United States on submarines, one of the 8 submarines, when exporting 7 tons of weapons-grade plutonium, made a treacherous escape and did not return to base in Russia. It remained in the West under the control of the Rothschilds and the secret world government to date. Hiding this fact from the Russian public, the Russian government announced the wreck of this submarine. I suspect that submarine was the Kursk. However, this nuclear submarine is still commissioned, apparently, in the interests of the traitors of the Russian people. In April 1992, Group C, under the supervision of Moiseev and Brodsky, under the general guidance of the Rothschilds, organised the export of Russian gold in liquid form by pumping it through oil pipes and then exporting 3,207 tons of gold in submarines outside of Russia. Unbelievable. Diesel submarines in the amount of 21, which exported this gold, never returned to Russia and are now used under the guidance of the Rothschilds by the secret world government for their own mercenary purposes. One of those submarines was the base of the former trustee Marduk to hide out on for long periods of time. Now, ultimately, he lost his game of hide and seek, and we took him out 3 years ago. After this operation, all persons who directly participated in the export of this gold under the order of the Rothschilds that was agreed with Yeltsin were physically destroyed, including the leaders of this operation, Moiseev, Brodsky, Savitsky and others. They just took them out. Dead people can't talk. And as warned in the last show, on Thursday, this is a warning to the top generals and the agents here in this country. How easily they just discard people they no longer have use for. Do you still think you're protected? You're not. Wake up, boys, otherwise it's time to die. We know they need to cull many involved in these operations and to save costs. You are the first to go, as many of you know and have seen too much. At the same time, Yeltsin also signed numerous agreements with different countries for the export and storage of assets in the form of gold, diamonds, platinum abroad. And he concluded unfavourable deals for Russia and signed numerous agreements with the United States that caused economic and political damage to Russia. Under the guise of execution of the program for the revival of the Russian economy, the monetary symbols of the 1961 issue in the amount of 44 trillion rubles, handed over by all of the former republics of the USSR for exchange in the central bank of the Russian Federation, as well as 11.8 trillion rubles in the accounts of Soviet citizens in the USSR Savings Bank. In 1992-93, by the decision of the Rothschilds and the Masons of Russia, Gerashenko and others and the Yeltsin government were converted and accumulated on the accounts of Tan Bank as a branch of the Central Bank of the USSR located in Kazan and its branch in Alma-Ata. Now, this operation was conducted under the supervision of foreign owners of the Central Bank of Russia and the Savings Bank of the Russian Federation, when J.P. Morgan, Baruch, etc., became members of the Masonic Order of Rothschilds, and under the direct control of Shemyaev, Gerashenko and other employees of the central bank, and in Kazakhstan under the control of Nazarbayev. Now, the transfer of money and their introduction into the economy passed through a system of so-called Chechen avizo and held under the supervision of the leadership of the RF Central Bank and the Ministry of Finance. These Chechen avizos were introduced into Russia through an active member of the Masonic Order, Anatol Rapoport, who was born into a Jewish family in Russia, under the direct supervision of Gerashenko and the heads of the officers of the Central Bank of Russia. In early 1993, through the International Islamic Bank, which was founded by the governor of Kemerovo region, Aman Tuliev, in addition to foreigners, Lebanese Colonel Walid of the United Arab Emirates, smuggled $20 billion into Russia. The division of these funds in the interest of the Yeltsin Group and also the funds transferred to the Bank Tan led to a dispute between the factions of Yeltsin, Gaidar, Shinomradin on the one hand and Rutskow and Khasbulatov on the other, and it ultimately resulted in the execution of the White House in October 1993. The Russian government building is also known as the White House. After the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, the ruble lost 1/3 of its value, and in the following years, while the country was gripped by civil war, the ruble dropped from 31 against the dollar to nearly 1400. This is what they did to Germany, remember. The ruble hit its historic low of 2.4 million per US dollar after the Civil War from 31. And the year the revolution's leader Vladimir Lenin died, it was redenominated to 2.22. So essentially they took 4 zeros off. The ruble collapsed along with the Soviet state, and different currencies were set up in 15 different republics. The Central Bank of Russia replaced the State Bank of USSR, Gosbank, on January 1st, 1992, and the Russian ruble replaced the Soviet ruble. The new Russian Central Bank set the official exchange rate at the Moscow Interbank Currency Exchange at 125 rubles to the dollar. By December 1992, the ruble had lost almost 2/3 of its value, and Russia's post-Soviet economy was dominated by shock therapy, and as Boris Yeltsin reforms spurred rapid inflation, millions of Russians lost their savings. Well, now you know where all their savings went to. Boris Yeltsin's political infighting with the communists in 1993, which was an illusion, caused the ruble to slide more. There was no political infighting. That was all a ruse. And it slid down to 1,247 per US dollar. Now, subsequently, Yeltsin won the political coup. It was said, of course he did. He was backed by the Rothschilds and the Masonic Order as well, and a constitution was signed on December the 12th, 1993. Now, in 1993, the president of the US Export-Import Bank, Kenneth Brodu, under the order of the Rothschilds and Yeltsin, signed a three-part agreement on financing Russian projects with the Central Bank of the Russian Federation in the person of V.V. Gerashenko again, and the Minister of Finance of the Russian Federation in the person of A.V. Vavilov. Now, according to the agreement, all projects supported by the Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation in the form of guarantees of the government of the Russian Federation were subject to investment with the support of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development in order to allocate funds provided by the IMF. In comes the IMF. Now, according to EBRD reports and the agreement signed by Kenneth Brodu, Gerashenko and Vavilov, 12 billion was then sent to Russia for the corresponding accounts of the Baltic Transit and Parex banks. And yet only $300 million arrived. And the sum of 11.7 billion was stolen with the assistance of the Rothschilds and transferred through the offshore zones to the personal accounts of the Rothschilds, Yeltsin, members of his family, and members of the so-called Yeltsin family, Vavilov, Shabazz, Shinomradin, and others. The all too familiar backdoor banking exercises known well now to our listeners of this show. Money goes in, it just gets taken out the back door. This then causes more financial upheaval in Russia. On October 11, 1994, an event known as Black Tuesday hit the Russian financial market and the ruble collapsed 27% in one day, which on top of a decline in GDP and massive inflation, which catapulted Russia into an economic recession. Now, by the end of 1995, chronic inflation had reached 200%. And in 1996, the currency closed at 5,560 rubles per US dollar. And an era of stability prompted the government to then devalue the currency and slash 3 decimal places. And on January the 1st, 1998, the ruble was set at 5.96 against the US dollar. Now, the bottom was ready to fall out of the economy, and on August the 17th, 1998, Russia announced a technical default on its 40 billion in domestic debt and ceased to support the ruble on the same day. At the time, the bank only had 24 billion in reserves. The stock market and the ruble both lost more than 70%, and nearly a third of the country's population fell below the poverty line. Along with the default came another mass devaluation of the ruble, and in 6 months the value of the ruble fell from 6 to the dollar to 21 to the dollar. In 2000, the Accounts Chamber of the Russian Federation conducted an audit of Veshtorgbank of the Russian Federation, but this bank, at the direction of Gerashenko, refused to provide full information on the tranches of 1993 through 1994. In other words, it's all very like the Fed. No audit games, is it not? And therefore the Accounts Chamber of the Russian Federation indicated in the report that the amount of 11.7 billion, which is the amount stolen by the Rothschilds out of the 12 billion that was sent for the Russian people, was then included in the total external debt of USSR and subsequently passed on to the Russian people to pay back. Again, just like the Federal Reserve antics in America. Later, part of the IMF tranches, which passed through the International Investment Bank, a non-resident of Russia, the USSR registered bank in the UN, controlled by Gerashenko, Shabay and Vavilov, was transferred to their accounts for the entire period of the activities, and it ultimately led to the default of the Russian Federation in 1998. So in other words, these three people looted the whole Russian country and collapsed it at the request of the Rothschilds. Part of the money supply transferred in 1992 to TAN bank accounts was sent under the control of the Rothschilds and the CIA American Masonic agent Ray C. Dam through the TAN ASA. The head is S.P. Shashurin for the purchase of gold, oil, gas, rare earth minerals, Kamaz cars, which were then exported abroad. Part of the money was also used to create the depository and strengthen state property of Tatarstan by the Shemiev clan, as well as the creation of the Alpha Group company, and part of it was brought to the Arab countries, where it settled on personal accounts of Shemiev and his clan. Under the gold, diamonds, oil and gas located in the country, packs of securities were formed, like bonds. Then through the company DGK plus CJSC, created for these purposes under the leadership of the member of the US Federal Monetary Committee and a member of the Security Council of Russia, Kononevich, the packages of securities were pledged to the US Federal Reserve and foreign banks. Just handed over. As a result of the activities of the company DGK plus CJSC in the period 1994 through 1998 in 74 banks of the world, huge amounts of money have been accumulated. Hundreds of trillions of US dollars. Just stolen. These capitals in the form of money, gold, diamonds, platinum, steel, oil withdrawn from the country through the TAN ASA TAN Bank, SP Shashurin Charitable Foundation and hundreds of other companies and funds were withdrawn from the financial turnover of Russia and are under the control of the Rothschilds. Under the control of the Rothschilds in 1996, 62% of Russia's budget money was withdrawn abroad under the leadership of Yeltsin and Chernomyrdin, and this financial scam eventually led to the default of the Russian financial system in 1998. This is what they're doing to America currently. And clowns like Mnuchin and others are facilitating it. Part of these large funds amounting to $42.8 billion was used by the Rothschilds to cover US debts to the Fed, and the rest were kept in foreign banks on accounts of various company funds and frontmen: Zagreb Elnoy, Ushakov, Karulin, Shazkir Zinov, Lyakov, Pospelov, Shurulov, Berezovkin, and the US citizen Majleshu, Fraser from Canada, Has, and many others. Only in the banks of the Solomon Islands there were $37.8 trillion that belonged to Russia. From the USSR and Russia between 1986 and 1998, 22,110 tons of gold was stolen and exported under the control of the Rothschilds, of which 11,200 tons were smuggled out, 9,700 tons of platinum, hundreds of tons of copper, millions of tons of oil, silver, tens of tons of rare earth minerals were exported. All of the country's riches are kept abroad and subsequently leveraged against. Hundreds of accounts have been opened for gold, and 2% of the exported gold assets was the shares of the Mason Lushkov, and was then transferred to the accounts of his wife, Baterina Intenko, of the company CJSC. In particular, the authorised capital of Intenko was transferred from Tenbank in 1994, 4,680,000,000 rubles, and stolen and exported diamonds worth a total of $2 trillion were kept in 8 foreign banks. In the Standard Chartered Bank USA, there are 8 tons of uncut diamonds smuggled out of Russia illegally and credited on the former employee of the SVR of the Russian Federation, Drobyshev, now a citizen of Germany. Part of the diamonds and gold under the control of shadow business are hidden on the territory of Russia, Uzbekistan, and Belarus. Standard Chartered Bank is a high-end money laundering operation, and they are also involved in child sex trafficking. They funnel money via the Boston Red Sox and Liverpool FC owner John Henry. Under the control of the Prime Minister of Tatarstan, Muratov and Shemiev, in 1993-94, 2,050 kilograms of gold together with diamonds for the amount of $2.8 million were exported to Israel. In total, through the Tan Asia, via 268,000 payment documents, $73 trillion of Russian assets has been withdrawn overseas, which are stored in the bank Santander, and a total sum of $116 trillion is taken out of Russia and stored overseas. The stolen funds were transferred and kept under the control of the Rothschilds clan in the accounts of the Medfin Group Foundation, the Erdogan Foundation, hello, Turkey, the Jacques Chirac Foundation, the Gorbachev Foundation, the Gladyshev Foundation, and many other companies and foundations of the world, and international clubs of billionaires under the control of Colonel General of SVR Merkulov and his company Golden Section, Golden Axis, and others. The Group C, under the common control of the Rothschilds clan and the managers of this group, continues to own, use, and dispose the material means taken out of Russia. the international government manages these capitals in its own interest through the company of Gubkin. And Grafa Valery Isakovich, chairman of the board of directors of JSC Ritek. Igorevich, again, chairman of the board of directors of Synergy Technologies. Nikolaevich, director of the Institute of Oil and Gas Problems of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Does that make any sense, that company? It's all fake fronts. Alexandrovich, first vice president of RAACS. Ivanovich, ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary of the Russian Federation. Alexandrovich, again, vice president of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences. Pavlovich, the vice president of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Ivanovich, again, chairman of the board of Russian Society of Civil Engineers. Ivan Shurevovich, president of the International Fuel and Energy Association, oligarch. Abdul Ovich, head of Most One Limited. Patan Boris Evgenovich, president of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. That should all be too familiar. Fak Raznovich, director of OJSC Tatneft. Nikolaevich, member of the Federation Council. Grigorievich, president of the Russian Union of Oil and Gas Constructors. Konstantinovich, chairman of the Council of the Union of Oil and Gas Producers of Russia. Nikolaevich, president of the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs. What this is all telling you is they took over all the main industries with the stolen money out of Russia. They took the Russian money, they took the Russian businesses, and they took over and run it, and then they keep the money. It's like a double dipping. Chairman of the board of Mikrus, Savalevich, and the deputy chairman Gan Barovich, members of the board Bard Ardenov, Alexeyevich, Alexevich, and a whole heap of other names that I'm going to end up with no tongue. It's going to end up down the back of my throat. Who are all chairman of the commission and members of the commission, and Boris Petrovich, Mihailin Mikhailovich. These are all the benefactors of the money they stole off the Russian people. Not only did they steal the money, they stole their businesses as well. These people are beyond scum. We'll be back shortly after this music break. Hi all and welcome back. About 2/3 of the way through. It's fairly mind-boggling, the figures involved. The amount that's gone missing and the levels of skullduggery and greed goes beyond all reason. Now, the brief significance of the contracts signed directly and through intermediate foreign companies, SOV, finances projects for the firm called Mikrus for sums exceeding 10 billions of euros. Sergei Olemsky also signed the JVA with the company WF Malta under the former general of the GRU, which is Spetsnaz, Mikhail Ivanovich Golitsyn, thereby acquiring the support of one of the main founders and the main operator of correspondent interbank relations with Russian banks, the Deutsche Bank. Today, 35% of that is owned by the Maltese Order World Foundation. You all know what's happening to them. This money on falsified financial documents by criminal conspiracy with corrupt officials in the European financial monitoring have been tested by the European financial monitoring as well as by the Deutsche Bank and have approval of the main founder of the World Fund Bank. Now, the necessary verification and permissive documents was received from Rosfin Monitoring and also the Central Bank of Russia. And the first tranche of dirty money was put on the correspondent account of the Deutsche Bank with the delivery address of the settlement account of the firm Mikrus, Mikrus, in Russia, in an amount exceeding €1 billion. Another huge part of the money, exceeding 500 trillion, was transferred via the interbank communications of KTT from British company CDB to HSBC Bank in Swiss Credit Suisse, a subsidiary of the Belgian firm Ceres, to a master account registered with Elisa Betts K. Hungary, and the holders of the money are M. Mail, Valery Tsymbal, Sergei Belozerov, and others. In 2004, the Rothschild clan issued a statement to the management of Russian assets to a Jewish Freemason, Valery Tsymbal, who was a resident of Israel, who, with the help of these documents, tried with the help of Olemsky and other high-ranking officials, the Masons, to commit embezzlement of money from the Russian budget, but this attempt was suppressed by the law enforcement agencies of the Russian Federation. The main Russian executors for implementing the above-mentioned will of the Rothschilds and the Masons of the Order of Malta in Russia are the Russian Masons Primakov, Gerashenko, Golanok, Golitsyn, Pashulsky, Olemsky, Tsymbal, and Belozerov, and others. The Russian clan and the Russian Masons in power, having the goal of dismembering and disrupting the Russian Federation and establishing a monarchy in Russia to carry out their secret criminal plan, and has gone rather well currently, except it hasn't. Now, initially, the financed extremist group that organised opposition rallies throughout Russia and also terrorist acts in the Caucasus and other regions. So now you know what's going on in the Baltic states. They then financed and sent to Russia numerous crowd of migrants, Muslims from the Central Asian republics, according to the planned program, the Golden Ark of Turkestan, according to which at least 15 million migrants entered Russia. And as I've mentioned in this series and also the main shows, they are using these people to create incidents and fulfill several operational programs that end up in turmoil, whilst they continue to loot. So people have to quit blaming Muslims for the ills. These are planted programs designed by these criminal elites, and like the Jewish, the Muslims are taking the blame when it's all carefully planned and a coordinated attack. It's problem, reaction, solution again, and the stupid people always give them the reaction they're looking for. We have to get smarter. If you think the non-Zionist Jewish people are the problem, you are naive at best and stupid at worst. If you believe Muslims are the problem, again naive and again stupid thinking. When the Russian president demanded from the government of the Russian Federation to restrict access of the migrants to the country, the Rothschild clan changed their tactics of then seizing the Russian territory. Currently, this criminal plan is being implemented in the territory of the Caucasian republics, up to 1,200,000 militants. These are your Baltic states, all infiltrated at the top levels by NATO goons, readied by the command of the Rothschilds clan to begin seizing kindergartens, schools, administrative buildings, stations and airports in all the regional centres of the KFD and the SFD, and even planning on marching to Moscow and support actions of those who are trying to overthrow President Putin of Russia. In the suburbs, the extremist group from Chechnya has arrived and is stationed with about 300,000 insurgents who all possess the information about every employee of the FSB and FSO of the Russian Federation. This tells you this is an intelligence-led operation, all done by NATO's open source handbook. Ain't that right, Mr. Steele? And are ready to destroy these employees and their families at any time when the order comes at our X. They're waiting for the Rothschilds to give them the go-ahead, in other words. These bandit formations are under the control of the Masons, the Siloviki from the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and the members of the Z Group remaining in Russia, who have already completely surrendered to the Rothschilds clan and the Order of Malta, and are ready at any moment to join the traitors of the Russian people. One example of what took place about the up-and-coming capture of the school in the Ossetian city of Beslan. A report about up-and-coming events, in other words, an intelligence report, was placed on the table of the ex-minister of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Jew Nergalayev, a week before it happened, but he did not take any precautionary measures. That's the way it works. Masons had prepared the collapse of the CIS, which will begin after the referendum in Ukraine about joining the EU. In fact, the disintegration of Ukraine and the CIS has already begun after the president of Ukraine, Yanukovych, signed a document on European integration on April the 8th, 2013. Immediately, the Parliament of Ukraine decided to pay compensation to the Tatars who were evicted from the peninsula back in 1944. After that, the leader of the Crimean Tatars, Mustafa Jamil, called on the Tatars of the whole world to come to Crimea. Now you know what's going on there. Moreover, Maria Hohenzollern Romanova already considers herself as the Queen of Russia. She declared in Turkey that in November she would be the absolute sovereign of Russia, and in early September 2013 she signed with the Turkish Sultan an agreement under which she passes the Crimea Peninsula. In connection with these agreements, in early October 2013, a group of citizens from Turkey, in the number of around 10,000, demonstrated on the seizure of Crimea and stepping in an extremist column through the streets of Simferopol. None of the power structures of Moscow or Kiev even reacted to these invasive actions of the Freemasons. All turned a blind eye. Immediately after the referendum, Crimea shall be separated from the Ukraine and will become part of Turkey. The Rothschild clan acts on legal grounds signed at different times by the leaders of USSR and the Russian Federation as follows. In 1915, all the royal families signed the agreement of ZT Trillennium, at which the gold of the families and the countries was transferred to the International Trust. In 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement became the receiver of the ZT Trillennium, which was signed by the USSR for a period of 50 years. They loaned it for 50 years and carried on. In 1953-54, metal accounts were opened in the Central Bank of USSR where a large amount of bank gold was deposited. The Trilateral Commission of the Trillennium Gold Reserve, hereinafter referred to as TTTGC, operated during the 1944-55 period with the participation of various states of the world for a period of 50 years, except all it was going to Rothschilds. During this period, the Commission was in possession of a mandate, rights and powers with regard to the United International Collateral Accounts, consisting of capital that was removed during the specified period and especially during the Yeltsin period with the participation of the Z Group. After the 50 years, various states of the world, disillusioned with the prejudiced use of the United International Collateral Accounts for 50 years, agreed not to extend the existence of the TTTGC, and in exchange appointed by Rothschild's patronage a single independent person to the position of international financial controller with rights, powers and legal ownership of the United International Collateral Accounts, RAC, Russian-American collusion, which is led by the Rothschilds clan. So what does this tell you? One, the collateral accounts were all stolen Russian assets. And two, those involved in it, the likes of Keenan, Dam, Keith Scott, Del Bosco, were all agents of the Rothschilds clan. Keenan said so himself, stating the gold doesn't belong to America. He was correct, but he stated it belongs to the Asians and the Dragon groups, both of whom are operated by the Rothschilds. Benjamin Fulford told Wilcock that Keenan was head of CIA Eastern Division agents in Bulgaria. He then disappeared for a bit, and then someone resembling him turned up again. Remember him doing interviews with a Rothschilds family member and also with a Romanov, who we've mentioned earlier. The Romanov family who are involved in coke dealing, of which the current Fulford partakes heavily. You can see that on several videos yourself. He looks all dishevelled and completely off his trolley. Now, the leaders of this company that manage the Z Group, which currently consists of 48 masters of Russian capital management around the world, 12 apostles, 12 apostles, oh, that's on a par with ascended masters there, and 168 custodians. Among the masters of management there are representatives of the group 2. Mikhail, who's now a US citizen, Alexander Gasper, Arthur Prokhorov, Kobzar, who, like Anna von Reitz, has a Nazi AAIA number, Galamat, Alek Bekova, Pakmohov, Lachiva, Dergachev, Govkin, Alensky, and many others. Kobzar eventually fell by the wayside, as did all Rothschild's former trustees. Took them all out. The Rothschilds clan also took control of both the Central Bank of the Russian Federation and the former USSR Bank, now the Bank of Russia, managed by Gerashenko, and 7 other banks of the Russian Federation, from which the country's financial resources to go for the maintenance of the European Union. So Russia's paying for the European Union also. Britain, the United States, and Israel. This is not the maintenance of the people for those countries. Oh no, it's the maintenance of the operations crew only. In other words, the agents and minions of these groups. So don't go blaming the countries. A significant part of Russia's profits is controlled by Washington through the Fed and the Rothschilds, mirroring the accounts of the Central Bank of Russia, where it's fixed at the exchange rate for that day in rubles. Many of our members will remember the intel about mirroring accounts, but it looks like it's got X amount in it and it's just a false front on a computer. And when you remove the mirror, then you see the real figures, and then they all found out they were all in massive debt. Furthermore, this profit out of these 8 banks is used to support the exchange rate of the euro, the dollar, and the pound sterling, while the Central Bank of the Russian Federation buys and pushes extra dollars in cash through its representatives in Moscow in the Kashirka store. Now, to date, more than 21 trillion US dollars have already been concentrated there, but none of it is given back to the Russian people. The Rothschilds are preparing this pillar of security. In other words, they're building up the finances to finance a coup d'etat in Russia via their new army, which is replacing the US military, lock, stock and barrel, NATO, and the establishment of a monarchy in Russia for the ascension of the Cavalier of the Order of Malta, Maria Vladimirovna Hohenzollern, and her son Georgy to the royal throne. What the Rothschilds plan and what they end up achieving is no longer given like in the past. Much of their plans have been shattered by Kim and the team. A great deal, in fact. The Central Bank of the Russian Federation, under the control of the Rothschilds clan, forces Russian banks to borrow money around the world in branches of the Rothschilds Bank, moreover in accordance with the Charter of the Central Bank of Russia. It has no right to grant loans to the government of Russia, the federal government, or the municipal authorities. They're just overriding it. Just make their own rules up. Thus, through the Central Bank of the Russian Federation, earns on the natural resources of Russia, the entire monetary resource leaves the country, pumping under a negligible 2% in US dollars, or our money is used to buy non-secured US derivatives. In other words, bailing out the vulture capitalists on Wall Street. And this is why Russia's on the brink of collapse, since the Central Bank of the Russian Federation can suck it out like a huge pump. Therefore, machine building, aircraft building, ship building, agriculture and other industries are degrading rapidly in Russia in general, like the whole country. At the same time, all wars waged by the armies of the European Union, the United States and Israel are paid for out of Russian financial resources. And it's time for the Russian people to think about how to take this resource away from them through nationalisation, as in most European countries. Highly placed government officials, law enforcement agencies and control officials support the Rothschilds clan and the Group Z in Russia. They have to be dealt with. It is necessary to note that in dirty force support, with the use of episodes of threats, practical actions of physical violence and kidnapping, professional militants of the Chechen Republic are acting with the personal participation of the head of the detachment of Adam and his deputy Elbrus and the head of the Group Z. The criminals plan to use the main financial assets from sources of stolen and exported financial assets during the period 1917 through 1924, and also during the Second World War and from 1955 through 1982, as well as the huge financial resources stolen from the peoples of the USSR during its disintegration and robberies of modern Russia. Recently, by conspiracy, the Rothschilds clan and the Olemsky Group tried, through the foundation of the late Richard Gravett and one of England's trust companies, to commit embezzlement of Russian capitals again using the German company SOV, which was established in 1996 as the asset manager of Russia for counterfeit documents. And in 2012, this group signed an agreement with the Russian firm Mikrus again, which general director is Olemsky again, and Stepanovich, who is a citizen of the Ukraine, who lives in Russia, in Moscow. The president of Mikrus, Serov Valery Mikhailovich, is the chairman of the board of trustees, is Shamal Iosovich, who's president of the Union of Oil and Gas Producers in Russia. And the board of trustees includes Abbas Ayadinovich, who's chairman of the boards of trustees of the Azerbaijan branch of the fund. Don't half get around, don't we? Gadzim Moradovich, president of the Republic of Dagestan, chairman of the Assembly of the Peoples of Russia. Nikolaevich, Lieutenant General of the Federal Security Services of the Russian Federation. Petrovich, Honorary President of the Russian Union of Oil and Gas Constructors, same people again. Bolshakov, Chairman of the Board of Directors of OJSC Polymetals. And Illich, President of the RGU of Oil and Gas. We'll be back with the final piece after this music break. Hi all, welcome back to the final part of tonight's show. On January the 20th, 1995, on the recommendation of the Rothschilds, the Department for International Financial Control was established, and one of the members of the Rothschilds clan was appointed ahead of this body. That was Ray C. Dam. So since 1995 it has been stopped. A sovereign international organisation Department of International Financial Transaction Control, OITC, was approved as the receiver of many assets, including banking gold. Ray C. Dam was appointed as the International Financial Controller and the legitimate heir and owner of the United Global Collateral Accounts for the global credit with full right and dispositive control over them, in accordance with legal decadence of RSD 1088 signed by various states of the world. Following the confirmation of the rights and powers of His Excellency Dr. Ray C. Dam by the Washington Commission in 1998, on January the 20th, 2003, the establishment of the Department of International Financial Control was signed by the President of the Russian Federation, was completed. So they got the Russians to sign off on it. Rogue Russians. After that, under the control of the Rothschilds on the basis of the content and requirements of the various international treaties, the Department of International Financial Control took over the management of all assets of Russia, and this organization was granted the status of a sovereign organization in accordance with the UN Charter, with the control number 10-60847. Since its inception and to date, OITC is the largest sole owner of mortgage securities in the world under the control of the Rothschilds clan. OITC is the largest single owner of gold and platinum reserves in the world, and in addition, a major owner of the bank preferred securities, international treasury securities, cash and other types of securities, all of which are registered as assets of the United Nations Global Class of Accounts, all conducted within the framework of the Federal Reserve System. Also, the Bank of International Settlements, the US Treasury, the Swiss State Bank, and the Swiss Federal Financial Agency, where all Russian assets are stored over the past centuries, including assets that were illegally exported from the USSR and Russia by the Z Group, totaling at least $80 trillion. All the above powers for OITC were issued by the UN Security Council and confirmed by various states of the world through international treaties in accordance with the Innsbruck Swiss Conventions. The Swiss again. Granting it the status of a sovereign organisation in accordance with the UN Charter. That sovereignty, by the way, has now been stripped, just so you all know, both the OITC and also the UN. They have no sovereignty to create treaties. The Department of International Financial Control, located in Thailand, is a non-public organisation which objective, as indicated by various states of the world and stipulated in a number of international treaties, is allegedly providing financial assistance to various states of the world, except it was never forthcoming. All illegally exported capitals from the USSR and the Russian Federation by the Z Group for an amount of at least $80 trillion over the last 30 years were in the hands of the above-mentioned international bodies under the control of the secret world government, the Rothschilds clan, and the Masons of Russia, who betrayed the Russian people and robbed the huge country, putting it on the verge of economic catastrophe. It should be noted, it is said, that the assets of the United Nations International Collateral Account are constantly used, providing financial assistance in whole or in part to countries and organisations such as the International Monetary Fund, IMF, the World Bank, the International Finance Corporation, the International Development Banks, the United Nations, and tied the US dollar as the currency of international reserve. Yes, they sent funds to their shell corporations and cronies. That's all they did. Because none of those companies sent anything to any other country or the people. Due to the capital taken out of Russia under the leadership of the Rothschilds, the budgets of the USA, England, Germany, France and other countries have been financed, and the debts of these countries are paid off. This is not correct. This is not done by the Russian assets. This was done by the trust. The assets placed on the United International Class of Accounts, including the assets of Russia illegally withdrawn by the Z Group, are now in the sole and absolute possession of the Rothschilds clan and His Excellency Ray C. Dam, and as their rightful heir and owner. Not no more than that. Without the permission of this person, Russia cannot obtain any assets for the investment in the Russian economy. This is what's gone on between 1995 and 2012, by the way. His Excellency Dr. Ray C. Dam is a designated and authorised person with all rights and powers with respect to the said assets due to the powers conferred to him by various states of the world, including the RF, which interests he represents, and such credentials have been certified and subsequently registered with the Rothschilds Control UN. Now, as chairman of the trust and the foundation and the single arbiter and the legal owner of all the assets located in the Divine Fund and the International Heritage Trust, which is the very fund Anna von Reitz, Langley 2 operative, tried to get hold of from Kim. That didn't work out. And their internal and auxiliary trusts, foundations and corporations, and on the basis of such ownership granted to him by the international community on January the 20th, 2005, Ray C. Dam has the absolute right to determine and decide, as long as the enforcement of such decisions, if necessary, by the Ministry of Justice of the United States of America. So they bought everyone off. That's what this is saying. This right of control is guaranteed by the Congress of the United States, another lot that were bought off, confirmed by the United States Senate and registered by the Administration and Budget Office under the President of the United States, which was at the time a Rockefeller, Bill Clinton. See how they all work together. After that, the authorization of this person and his status of full exemption from liability, another common theme, is it not, was certified by the Great State Press number 632259984 and additionally registered within the International Department of the Ministry of Finances of the United States of America, the Bank for International Settlements, Swiss State Bank, and the Swiss Federal Financial Bureau, on the basis of which his definitions and decisions on all matters relating to the assets under his control are unchangeable. Perhaps not. And the execution of such decisions cannot be postponed, changed or cancelled by any contract or agreement between other parties and or institutions or any other decision not endorsed by the international community, or so they thought. They thought wrong. The decisions and determinations made by Ray C. Dam against the United Nations Global Credit Collateral Accounts, it said, took precedence over all and any laws, judgments, legal norms, or similar documents determined by any court of any kind or any other state, including the international courts or the world courts. This is why it's pointless challenging them in courts. They control it all, and subsequently it's a quango operation of the Rothschilds clan, all courts. In addition, the international secret government administered by the Rothschilds for the control and management of assets exported by Group 2 specifically created a Russian-American company called RAC, led by the billionaire Jacob Rothschild himself. Group 2 is Langley. Langley 2. There are 3 divisions of Langley. And Ray C. Dam and his former wife, Karen Clanmother MacDonald, are or both were Rothschild's assets. Period. Also in that group was Keith Scott, another of Neil Keenan's sidekicks, and another, like so many following him, who departed the playing field. Here is what happened back in 2006 with OITC, and it is eerily the same figure Neil Keenan stated the costs to go into the bunkers. Coincidence? You decide. In April of 2006, Ecuadorian investigative journalist periodical Blanco y Negro reported that in December 2005, Germania Uluri, mayor of the municipality of Ona, met with OITC representatives in Cambodia and returned as the organization's ambassador to the South American nation. The following month, she summoned a meeting of 6 mayors from the Association of Municipalities of Ecuador to convey the OITC's offer of a $150 million loan to finance development projects. Loan. A lot different from the trust. We're not loaning anything. Funds will be handed over. There was only one catch to this $150 million loan. They were told they had to place a $20,000 deposit in a Malaysian bank account. Sound familiar? Which Blanco y Negro reports that they did. They went ahead, put the $20,000 in, and to date, no OITC financing has materialized in Ecuador. It's not going to now, it was blocked back in 2012. Now, OITC went quiet for a few years until an incident involving another out of Langley 2 group, like Leo Wanta, both of which got sold out of deals. And in 2017, in an Oregon federal court, where Winston Trout, Langley 2, was charged with having attempted to defraud the US government by trying to pay off his taxes with fraudulent bonds. In response, Trout filed a motion to dismiss, claiming he was appointed as an emissary of the OITC by Ray C. Dam in 2010, and as such enjoys immunity from prosecution. That didn't work too well either. To account for, control and analyse the capital from Group C, America also established in Washington an analytical department, AU Treasury Department, which dominates and manages the gold market of the whole world in a rather disciplined and highly competent manner that suits themselves, in other words. And according to the Rothschilds' forecasts, this AU Treasury Department will be doing this for the next 30 years. Again, what Rothschilds thought is no longer guaranteed, unlike the past. Thus, within this jurisdiction, there are 3 secret institutions run by the Rothschilds and the secret world government for the management of world capital. The Department of International Financial Control. This institutional organisation exists to assist and advise the International Controller. The AU Treasury Department. Hello, Mr. Mnuchin, Rothschild's puppet. Consolidated Credit Bank Limited, which is a non-public domestic bank that has the authority and is considered to be the last holding bank, and the only bank in the world that has legal authority and legal capacity to confirm the assets and accounts of the International Financial Controller and issue any legal obligation for such accounts, and also to send beneficiary payments to such accounts. Not no more they can't. Oops. This bank is was an institutional bank established within the Federal Reserve System. The bank is closed to the public. It cannot be found in the publishing houses of the Banker's Almanac, the banker himself, or any other guide. So essentially what they did, they created a fresh air bank that exists, but nobody knows it exists and nobody can locate it. All very Bitcoin-esque, that to me. These three above-mentioned legal bodies determine the order and control over all the Tsarist, Soviet and Russian capital, and the capitals of the whole world under the direct control of the Rothschilds and the Masonic Order. That is, the entire world financial process is completely controlled by the US, as they have all the access codes to the accounts and the slightest movement of financial funds, although 2/3 of all cash dollars and gold, platinum, are outside of the US. These control bodies have fantastic detailed information as they are connected with all banking structures, and such detailed information is not available to any other country. Not no more. Those codes are no longer accessible and haven't been for the best part of the last decade. Only one person has the codes now, and she will not be transferring it to clowns and their world domination games, and the funds will return to the people to whom it belongs. Russia, the territory from which these riches were exported, does not even have part of such control and or the accounting of it. Well, you would have control of it if you would all get your act together and remove all the obstacles. Same applies to every other country. The world has had enough of these Rothschildian psychopaths and their inherent reptilian DNA. Get rid of them. Assets of the United International Collateral Accounts for the Russian capitals exported from Russia over the last century under the Global Loan Facility are located in the following countries: Japan, United Kingdom, USA, China, Taiwan, Philippines, Thailand, Cambodia, Jordan, Singapore, France, Germany, Austria, Luxembourg, Belgium, Norway, the Caribbean, Egypt, South Africa, Uruguay, Argentina, Italy, Solomon Islands, and many other places and countries around the world. In the Russian depositories, the CBR, IIB, Sberbank, VEB, VTB, Profbank, and Citibank, for an amount exceeding $21 trillion. Citibank issue has now been resolved. They have zero left and will follow Deutsche Bank into the toilet. Actual accounting of funds in account ledgers is maintained within the Federal Reserve System of the USA, the US Treasury, the Swiss State Bank, and the Swiss Federal Financial Administration and the Bank of International Settlements. Not no more than that, because Kim has control of all the account ledgers. The transfer of any Russian assets is limited to the framework of the international central banking system, and in order to restore historical justice and return the looted people's capital from the Russian Federation, the RSFSR, the USSR, the Tsarist Russia, and other historical assets of Rus and the Russian people, stolen over the past millennia on the recommendation of the Russian and the RSFSR leader, and perhaps the leader of the entire Soviet people, Vladimir Putin, a foundation for social and economic development of the regions. They have decided to set up and establish the Ra Treasury. The Ra Treasury Fund was given the status of supreme organisation and executive body in the monetary, social, economic and cultural spheres throughout the territory of the Commonwealth of the Soviet Socialist Republics for the fulfillment of the above stated purpose, and also the only authorised body of the USSR approved the Ra Treasury Fund to receive all the above stated assets. The above powers were irrevocably given to the Ra Treasury Fund by the expanded Presidium Plenary Session of the Military People's Council of the Commonwealth of the USSR, which is the legitimate successor of the USSR. The SSR was the legitimate successor. As for the Ra Treasury, this is more sidetracking bullshittery, period. Those clowns are based in Thailand, and they are linked with the Ray Dam team and the Rothschildians. This is a typical plot of the clowns when things go wrong. Present another solution that appears to be congruent for and by the people, but operates in secret by the same clowns. A bit like crypto and blockchain dribble. A bit like the BRICS organisation. A bit like Procter & Gamble and their Thrive movement. And Jared Rand and his Medbed. All given the illusion they want to help us. All of it is total bollocks. It should be noted by people globally that there has been 1.875 million metric tons of gold has ever been mined on this planet, which far exceeds what we've been told. Of the 1.875 million tons, 1.3 million tons belongs to the Rus. Another fact his story will never tell you. A common theme. But this series is about telling the truth, and many people don't want to hear the truth. They can't handle it. I've been labelled a white supremacist, a Nazi, anti-Semitic because of this show. But that is another common theme of the global system of control, to label people with derogatory terms and hope some of it sticks. A bit like the term conspiracy theorist, which came out of Langley. Essentially label anyone who dares to tell the truth or given a different perspective or opinion from their bullshit narrative. Those people can call me what they like. They're too stupid to get anything. And arguing with or against them is the height of pointlessness. Let them stew in their own insanity. This is what Kim and the team took on. You've heard all the figures, you've heard all the organisations, all the trusts, the slush funds, money here, money there. global financial skullduggery everywhere you look. And you now know over time we have managed to locate and reclaim most of those stolen assets and return them into the trust for future dispersal back to the origins of where they came. All the gold, resources, assets, offshore accounts, trust funds, backdoor looting of countries is now all blocked. It is and was a staggering undertaking to take on, and more so to achieve the levels accomplished to date. Perhaps now people will understand the depth of the work undertaken by Kim, myself and the team, at great cost to their lifestyle and way of living under a daily threat to their life is no fun for anyone. Trust me, I know. So when people ask, where are the funds and why is it taking so long? Perhaps with this show you will begin to understand why. The depth of it. The amount that had to be cleared. If not, then you are beyond ignorant and disrespectful to the work undertaken by the few. To the people of Russia, you know who you are. And I know you're listening in. It's clean-up time. And all the filth, clans, KGB 1 and 2 elements, the SS, who are largely not Germans, the Zionist elements and the Dragon clowns and the Mason clowns all have to be removed before further transactions of money owed to Russia and its people contained within the trust will be forthcoming. The previous batch sent to you was transferred onto the same now Chinese elements, except they're largely not Chinese at all, who have participated in the destruction of Russia for centuries. You gave it to them. Kim pulled all those funds back. The latest transfer recently was heading the same way, and Putin needs to decide once and for all which side he's actually batting for before any more time-wasting transactions take place. Again, Kim pulled back all those funds as well. So you can cry all you like over the phone, Russia's collapsing. When Kim sends you money, you're sending it to the people who collapsed the country. Fix it. Mr. Putin, your sole interest is for and by the Russian people only. You've been told that several times, on and off world. Not oligarchs, dragons, masons, or spying agencies, both foreign and domestic. The people only, Mr. Putin. Fix it and Kim will help you. Until then, quit playing the games. We see your moves way before you do. The question remains, Mr. Putin, is how is it that 2 Westerners who were not born there, and only one of them has visited your country, has done more to enhance Russia than you have? And I don't say that for plaudits. I say it for you to see the mire and illusion you've surrounded yourself with, and I hope it inspires you to fix it for the Russian people. They have much to teach the rest of the world. Vast quantities of knowledge and understanding way beyond the levels in the rest of the Western world. Way beyond. Why wouldn't you want to promote that? Tell the world who really created communism. Tell the world about Radomir, Mary Magdalene, Rus, Nikolai and Svetlana, Levashov, and tell the world about your past history and the achievements of the Rus, plus who really built the Great Wall, and no, it wasn't China. And most of the world's other monuments falsely attributed to the Greeks or Romans. We all want to hear it. The question remains, Mr. Putin, are you the cult of Rasputin or the Ers and Rus Putin? This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.